partner panel come up first. So we have from the partner panel, we have Dan Fay ill today, and Muhammad Ali from Microsoft will be standing in for him. Steve Kopp, David Tarberton, and Lynn Usser. So, and the panelists have been given the questions just this morning. And, your local organizer had them done days ago, and between Mary and I, somehow it just didn't
get out. One who got it today.
Oh, no,
Okay.
everybody got them today.
Fair opportunities.
Yeah. I didn't read Mary's email after 9 o'clock last night. It would have been yesterday, last night. So what we have then are a set of questions. Those questions, same questions are in your packet. So everybody, or sorry, they were out on the table out there. Anybody need a set of questions?
Mike, will you pick up your foot for me? Thank you. Apparently we've got to move all kinds of microphones. Video, on remote meeting. Watch what you're saying. There's lots of mics here.
Is that also a mic, Mary?
That is also a mic. That is for the video. What is it? Is it calling out? Here, go a little more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then for each of the panelists, if you might make a 30-second pitch for why you think you might be on this panel. After all, we selected, right, and you agreed, and Mohammed didn't agree, he got appointed. So just a few words, background from maybe where you're coming from your organization background, things you might have done in the past, and a perspective that you might have, and then we'll get into the questions. Anybody first? Right to left, Lynn?
Lynn Nursery, U.S. Geological Survey. Background, I spent about 17 years in the academic environment, about 25 years working for USGS. And maybe that's why I'm on this partners panel, because USGS does work with lots of partners. In fact, almost all of our data now is collected by partners. So maybe I can just leave it at that.
Okay, I'm David Tarbarton. I'm a hydrologist at Utah State University in the Utah Water Research Laboratory. I do a lot of work on hydrologic modeling as well as hydrologic information systems, trying to look at how to share and collaborate around hydrologic data. I also do a lot of work with digital elevation models, trying to figure out any useful information that can be gleaned from digital elevation models. And perhaps they put me on the panel because they want to get their money's worth from having invited me to give a keynote tomorrow. So,
nice. My name's Steve Cope. I work in the software development group at Esri on the geoprocessing and spatial analysis functionality. I think I'm here on the panel because most of you guys use our software or have access to our software, and we are a partner in this project and working on how to integrate the CyberGIS Gateway open source framework with Esri's products as well.
So my name is Muhammad Ali, and why am I here? Short answer, because Dan's sick. Long answer, because Dan and I, we used to stretch Microsoft along the spatio-temporal direction. So, the work is divided between Dan and myself. So Dan is usually the one who is giving the nice talks, and I'm the one who is shipping the products. So my job is to go start few research projects at Microsoft Research, then go again, kill few of these projects, pick the best of them, make them reality. So because Dan is the one who is best in giving the talks, let me see how far can I put myself and Dan in trouble today.
Okay, very good. So what I'd like to do is give you the opportunity to address any one of these 5 questions that are here. The 5th one is the other question. That is, if you have a particular perspective on the nature of partner strategies and research projects and so on, and the other 4 questions that kind of don't resonate with you, then say what you'd like to say about that. Anybody want to start off? David?
Sure, I'll start off. I guess when I think about partner engagement, and I was sort of jotting down some ideas related to the questions. The first thing comes to mind is who are the partners? So there's a need to define that, and is that organizations who would work with CyberGIS or individual customers? And then probably when you think about engaging people, perhaps engaging users, I think you need to think about what's in it for them. Why would somebody want to use CyberGIS? And it has to be because it can solve a problem that they probably immediately want solved. We've faced similar issues. I'm working on a project that I'll be talking to you tomorrow about that's dealing with collaborating and sharing hydrologic data. And one of the needs it's trying to address is the sort of NSF mandate for better data management. And that's not a very good motivation. I mean, people sort of have to manage their data properly. But what we're trying to think about is develop the system so that people actually get something from working with the system, putting the data, and there's a what's in it for me aspect to it. And I think that's going to be the real way that one gets use and uptake on these sort of things.
Any comments for David? Any questions about that?
I guess Dawn Wright from Esri, and what you were saying in terms of what's in it for me, I think really resonates with a lot of us, especially as we're trying to engage partners who are GIS specialists like ourselves, but also partners from allied disciplines who, as we were discussing before, they may not know what the GIS acronym means, or they are not in our world. So I was wondering if you had any follow-up comments on what are the best ways to communicate the what's in it for me principle. And of course, this is just off the top of my head, and it's springing this on you, but.
So sorry, David, just before you start, I wanted to interject at this point in time is that the nature of this conversation, as well as the nature of the panel conversation coming up here, will be the basis for breakout group discussion. So I wanted to get into just a little bit of an exchange to start out with. So if there are some ideas that come out and resonate with you, please do remember the kernel of that idea so we can actually get after it in the breakout discussion for follow-up kind of discussion. Sorry, go ahead, David.
So, well, I think part of the what's in it for me is actually listening to people, listening to so go out and listen and see what you can learn about what people need. And I guess looking from the outside, I've sort of always been impressed by Esri at a company for doing that quite well. At some level, you might say it's quite shrewd because you go and engage with a lot of customers, get them to, at various conferences and other venues, sort of share ideas about what's needed, and then go and build it and then sell it to them. Well, I mean, that's shrewd. It's also, I mean, it's knowing what your customers want and then making that part of your business model. And I think everybody needs to do that, no matter whether they're a sort of commercial or academic or any sort of a organization.
Steve, did you want to make a comment on that perspective?
Yeah, but probably not in the way that you might be expecting. Because what David brought up as one of his, sort of partner issues was actually my sort of question 5 final thought, which is in the, as we come toward the end of the first 5 years of this project and think about what are the next 5 years, one of the sort of fundamental aspects of the project was to build a framework for people to plug in analytic methods and other things. So I think what we need to also be thinking about, which I think is what David was getting at, was, how do we grow this group? What incentive is there for somebody to plug their thing into the gateway? How do those people become part of the circle? Does everybody who wants to plug something into it need to have NSF funding and going to be standing there, please pay me to help put my stuff in. There needs to be some other incentive, right? So how do we get the CyberGIS gateway framework to a point where there's enough sort of momentum and interest and motivation, and we have, you know, guidelines and documentation so that other people want to join the party just because, you know, it's the thing to be doing. Of course you're in the gateway. You know, you're developing cool parallel software to run in a cloud environment. Why wouldn't it run in the gateway? So.
Go ahead.
Steve, in that context, what do you think of the OGC model as a way of engaging the community? Is that the kind of model that you would think might be successful at opening things up? It always seems to me that participants in OGC work.
You mean from an organizational structural perspective? Yeah, that could be a way to do it.
You issue challenges to the community and you wait till the community responds.
And look for people to collaborate with each other and come to you and present a potential solution. Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I like that.
Interesting turn of comments. Actually, that was kind of along the lines I was going after, but a little bit different now. What about OGC? Is there something in the OGC technology world which we really should be taking more advantage of in terms of spatial analysis and modeling? Because the focus of this particular project, for the most part, is spatial analysis and modeling. It is collaborative. There are a number of other things there. But something along the lines of, you know, some things have happened in the last year, 2 years in terms of OGC trying to do something with wrappers for analysis and modeling, and maybe not, but maybe there's a different approach. But again, as Mike was saying, it's, one could look at the OGC model and say just the nature of that engagement rather than what it is they're actually doing, because what it is they're actually doing is more so what's needed today, tomorrow, and the next day. And I'm not sure that our project is there for today, tomorrow, and the next day, although maybe a week or 2 weeks down the road might work.
Yeah. I think
you
maybe
familiar
we're,
with it?
as a
Yeah.
project, maybe we could be more engaged with what's going on with WPS and what we think needs to happen with WPS. You know, we've had some sort of discussions within the project about, you know, some of the limitations of it, but I don't think we've really put the effort into figuring out how to move it forward or what the alternative to it is.
So could
Mohammed,
I, sorry to interrupt you, could I ask along those lines? Because I found Chun Han's presentation to be particularly compelling from that standpoint, given that he was talking about, I don't know where he is. Oh, okay. Given that he was talking about the OGC WPS.
His eyes are on screen right now. And yet he has a,
So just complimenting your presentation, and was wondering if there's going to be more like that in terms of more of these kinds of case studies or implementations with OGC WPS, because there's been a lot of discussion about the potential for WPS, but I've not seen much implementation, on the ground implementation of that.
Yeah, I think for our year 4 plans, those are some of the things we were going to look at.
So maybe I'll make one comment with the Kohazi Hydrologic Information System project. We engaged with OGC and effectively worked with them to develop WaterML into a standard. And that was a really slow, sort of fairly bureaucratic process. But in the end, it was necessary to get effectively the uptake from large organizations, the USGS, other in the US as well as worldwide, because if people are going to sort of do things the way that you're developing them, they want something that they know is going to have some stability to it. And OGC is a process of ensuring some degree of stability.
Andre.
Sort of completely change the discussion. So we heard this morning from Mike about what we could do for the average user, and the ability to track every car, but you could also say every person. One thing one could do to the average user as someone engaged in analysis using CyberGIS tools is also to prevent the analysis, to disrupt what business and government tries to do using these tools. So what is the agenda there as far as, so when I think, for instance, many of us switching to using the Tor browser, where through onion skinning, the other side doesn't know anymore where we're coming from, where we are. So what are we doing is there an agenda to disrupt the efforts of governments and business to track us through, in fact, computational means, enable and us sort of counteracting that? Because, for example, the German government is thinking about adding data privacy to the UN Charter of Human Rights. Are we engaged in that other side?
I could tell you probably the CyberGIS project overall is not at this point in time, but I can tell you last week at the National Geospatial Advisory Committee, the Assistant Secretary of Water and Science who's responsible for FGDC took this issue up in a major way, and NGAC is looking at it. So if they're looking at it, I'm not sure that CyberGIS should really be looking at it as a research project, although part of the community might be. That's my take on it at this point. Anybody else want to make?
Actually, I'd like to make a comment on the OGC and the comment over here, but at the beginning, let me try to give them more hard time and just give few comments regarding the engagement. It's just general partnership. I just want to say briefly that in 2000, we shipped SQL Server 2000 with some minimal functionality in the geospatial domain. Then the next immediate release, it was at 2005, which means there was a gap of 5 years. So whenever you give the researcher like me 5 years to do something, you have enough time to go make research projects, then kill a couple of them, then get the time to incubate these research projects, then ship some kind of decent functionalities. Right now, they ask me to ship every 3 months. And if I do not ship every 3 months, I am in trouble. So someone like me is really struggling to do any kind of innovation. This is why I'm saying for me to do anything innovation, I am really seeking to do partnership with researchers, mainly with academia. Those are the folks who are doing innovative stuff. Those are the guys who we can go help them do the research. They afford get some research, some kind of fail or develop some research, redo some research. Then whenever something looks promising, I can make a case for it and I can make it reality in 3 months. So we are really looking for more collaboration with academia as we are going in the future. But right now, competition is very hard, ship cycle is getting tighter, researchers so my job is not just to do research, no, my job is to make research a reality. This is my job. So I am not the one doing research, but I go shop for research and make it a product. So please help me. Tomorrow, go and run after Dan and ask him how we can make this collaboration, okay? But remember, he's sick. Make sure you are special temporally. Regarding OGC. OGC is great, but OGC is very slow. So we are willing to help work with OGC to define future standards. But competition is very hard and the ship cycle is moving very, very fast. So we are not waiting for OGC. If OGC develops standards, we will be more than happy to go and adopt these standards. And this is what we have done with our SQL Spatials. We are willing to participate and shape the standards in the future. But if OGC is going at, this is the normal base of this kind of standardization, we have to go faster at our ship cycles, yeah. We are struggling because of a different reason, and the CyberGIS has to do something with this comment, because I rephrase this comment in a different way. To help us help you in the CyberGIS domain, you have to help us demolish building number 8. If we demolish building number 8, we can really help you. So what is building number 8? Anyone knows what's building number 8 at Microsoft? Okay, so building number 8, it's a building full of lawyers. Every time we try to do a GIS project where we try tracking people, where we try collecting their GPS data from our cell phones, we have to go to building 8, then directly we go head home directly, keep crying for some time, try to recover, kill the project, start another GIS project. So because of privacy, I don't want to say all, but most GIS projects are getting cut down. So if you are funding projects to deal with privacy, either fund them or say, you know, the problem is totally closed. Say we cannot do privacy. If you want to get location-based service, we cannot do privacy. Please give us this statement so we go back to the lawyers. Or do some research in privacy preserving location service. Either solve our problems or tell us that you cannot and you will never be able to do this. Then we can keep our projects going on again.
So, Shawan, I wonder if you might comment on the integration issue, because OGC as a topic came up because of the nature of the integration, the plug and play. I think there was something about plug and play that was mentioned there. Models and data, undoubtedly, the Kawasi effort.
Yeah, so well, first in the context of WPS, which is the web processing service,
Yeah.
which, sure, yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of, so at the core of the CyberGIS project is this integration, software integration, cyber infrastructure. Really, that's the key issue there, right? And so why would it be, why would it be, devil's advocate a little, that the CyberGIS project did not adopt an OGC ready-made WPS kind of way of doing things to begin with? Why is it that we in CyberGIS project, and it's not just you, but go ahead, you being PI, a principal responsibility in a sense for setting direction.
I will respond to an earlier question about privacy. You responded, I think, in a very interesting way. In our project, I want to clarify that we did not have any major element of research on privacy, but we take very seriously security into account. So the analytics tools, data coming to our software environment, we are very serious about protecting the tools, the data from all the boundaries. In fact, we partner with our colleagues in the security research community for this regard, and the colleagues who collaborate with us are well funded by MSF and other agencies on this, and we are examined by these researchers as a sort of best practice case for them to understand the implications of geospatial tools and data. So that's a comment. Privacy is a completely different species and animal.
And this is something I highly appreciate. If you say your solution is in security, not in privacy, this is what I need. Which means we will keep your data, we will give your GPS locations in cages. No one is going to see them except Microsoft or whatever. So it is security. But privacy is something else, which we cannot do.
Yeah. I just want to make that clarification. With regard to why so far the CyberGIS project has not gone to the process of OGC, especially in the realm of analytical services. This is probably resonating with a comment David made earlier, and also Ali made earlier. This process is long, and I think in our CyberGIS project, we tend to gain insights, research insights, and being innovative. I view the engagement with OGC as a broader impact aspect of the NS project. If OGC is interested, I reached out a few times to OGC folks, if they are seriously interested and our broader impact motivation is strong enough to cross the threshold, we might make that happen. But our project is not in the best position to work through that process to guarantee something or to have high hope something will happen. It might happen after a while, given the maturity and the traction our research results might lead to some creation or adaptation of their standards. But it's hard to make a goal in the CyberGIS project, given the nature of the project focus on science and innovation. And OGC process is really to achieve that impact. To us, it's broader impact. It's not the scientific merits.
But we could, as a research project, come up with some ideas that eventually could get picked up by OGC,
That's
let's say example, and other partners.
Or to go back to when I introduced the OGC as a topic, it wasn't really the idea of engaging specifically with OGC. It was with using that kind of model to promote communication.
And hopefully I made that clear as well, but good that you reiterated that. But both of those essentially are really huge opportunities yet. But even with regard to the former that you were after there, there's such a huge infrastructure at OGC to be bureaucratic, to make sure that outreach is so tremendous. And you're looking at the major portion of the outreach of community engagement in CyberGIS. That's University of Washington, these two people right here. So what I'm making a point of is that, and with the rest of the project as well, and these meetings as well, and so on, and our efforts here, of course, in terms of resources, pale in consideration to what OGC has. Having sat next to Mark Reichert, he's CEO for OGC, the last 2 days last week, and then watched Doug Richardson talk to Jack Dangerman about privacy, where Mark and I didn't talk about privacy at all to each other. We talked about model componentization is what we were talking, but there was this huge group talking about privacy, and so I just wanted to not make light of it, but make the point that the NSDI 2.0, it's a huge issue in the National Spatial Data Infrastructure 2.0 that's going to be deployed on the geospatialplatform.gov in the new future here, and they're just barely trying to figure out what to do about it because it is a huge issue out there. Privacy, just like you said, all of the lawyers are after it, so why would I want to be after it? Let's have them work out, and with the scholars, number of scholars as well, working that out as well. So the integration topic here, that is this topic about what we're trying to do, I think is a main issue. How do we reach out broader to community and get the things that we're doing in integration to a state at which we have more people plugging in, if that's possible?
So I think we were discussing about governance potentially to scale up this integration organization on the government point of view. Could you help, or maybe others all help each other, characterize the OGC governance with respect to their characteristics that might be similar to the way academic community organization could behave in a similar fashion? So some key characteristics share this commonality.
Well, in terms of the membership of OGC, right, for the most part, it is industry that is membership in OGC. The scholarly world, and it is resources. So the scholarly world plays a lot less role. Mark Reichert last year, not complaining basically, but saying, Tim, where is the opportunity here for more academics to take part in test beds, as it would be? Test beds are expensive in terms of deployment, carrying out the activity of test beds. So when we talk about membership, just in terms of numbers here, for governance in terms of numbers, I'm going to somewhere near 1,000 members internationally, worldwide. And if you get 1,000 members, all with pretty big bucks, because one of the major bucks is $50,000. Throw in the pot here for being a really well-connected member. That takes that group, which is somewhat bureaucratic, a very long way in terms of moving forward with resources to get out to the world to do this conversation. And I'm the technical representative here to OGC from the University of Washington. So I'm on the email list, and I get at least a dozen emails a day from one technical coordinating group or another, and they're talking details about sorting out some things. So there's a pretty large activity going on there, but nonetheless, from what Mike was talking about in terms of, there is a process. In fact, we used here in the CyberGIS project the use case template in the very first year from OGC. That was their template, basically mixed with a couple of other things. But that's something we can take up a little bit more in terms of moving things forward, maybe with some other of our academic partners, as it would be, to try and emulate more of that OGC process. And then maybe at the same time, go to Mark Reichert and say, well, Mark, how can you help out here in terms of, how can OGC, that is, help out here in terms of the scholarly road to come a little closer to where we're at rather than the scholarly road per se, research road, going all the way over to where they're at, coming up with some kind of happier meeting would be. Governance, somebody else? Yeah.
There are government members to OCC as well. USGS is a member of OCC, as are a number of other government agencies. We pay our thousands of dollars every year to be a member as well.
I want to say something about the technical perspective of OGC standards. So we, in CyberGIS, we use a lot of OGC standards, including WMS, WCS, WFS. Specifically for WPS, we also evaluated the service, and we found some areas that CyberGIS can definitely contribute, because WPS, as a standard, it just defines the interface to list some of the functional interfaces you have and how to call these services. It doesn't really address some of the critical points in computational science, which I think is critical because you cannot just call that service. You don't know how long it will run, where should it be executed, and how fast you can get back the results. Without those things, you just throw a WPS interface there, and I just throw a 300 megabyte data to you, and it's not going to work. So in that regard, we evaluated the service, and we think the quality of service associated with the back-end components, including load balancing, the scheduling part, those are necessary components. We haven't worked with the OGC community, but technically we have evaluated that part. But again, as a standard, we understand the complexity of standardization of anything you introduce into that process. It may be long, it has to be based on agreement, voting process. But for WPS itself, why should I choose WPS if it doesn't differentiate itself from say SOAP or REST services? For other type of OGC services, we understand the WMS service, it has characteristics of mapping attributes. WCS has the raster service attributes, and WFS has the vector service attributes. For WPS, we don't know.
So in a way, there's a ripe opportunity here, whether it's a white paper or a white paper becoming a publication, as it would be. So publications are, of course, going to be better than the idea of the white paper. In terms of understanding where the CyberGIS project is and where OGC is and where the transition is to something like that, and what OGC might have to do in terms of picking up more of what the CyberGIS community has identified and moving forward, because there's a lot of capability out there in the cyber community, we'll call it CyberGIS community, and that OGC is more of the G part than anything else, as it would do, and move toward that direction and maybe grow a stronger link between the activities in the geospatial community and the activities in or research community, I should say, and OGC. So we're coming, unfortunately, to close, as it would be interesting for this panel. Last comments that the panel might want to make in regards to partner strategies.
I took a whole different approach to this set of questions than what's been transpired in this discussion. And what I see is, just in the first question, what CyberGIS activities, particularly those conducted by your organization, for example, are setting directions for CyberGIS research and education, community engagement. for me, that means what are we doing now that really demands CyberGIS and pushes it to do other things and bring other people involved into it. And I'll give you one quick example. Right now, we use desktop and server-based GIS to produce the U.S. topographic map series. We produce over 100 maps a day from our digital databases. And that's using data, our primary layers are hydrography and elevation. Our elevation layer that we use is a 10-meter resolution for the entire country, which is loaded on the CyberGIS infrastructure. We are now undertaking the 3-DEP program, where instead of 10-meter resolution, that data essentially goes to 1-meter resolution. So we're looking at a 100-fold increase in the amount of data volume, which is going to drive a lot of the activities away from current desktop GIS to something like CyberGIS in order to be able to handle it and to deal with those types of issues. When we have the country covered for the lower 48 states, we'll have 7 to 9 petabytes of data. Somehow that has to be handled in our GIS environments to generate products and all those things. So I see those things as pushing this infrastructure. And where does it come from? Well, for us it comes from partners and other sources, and we look to organizations like this research project developing the technology that goes forward for us to be able to implement a production system 5 years from now that will use those kinds of data to actually produce maps at the same rates for our country or at higher rates. So to me, I see the data is a driving factor to me, and it's one of the real limitations that we've seen in some of the CyberGIS activities is we really need the parallel I/O capability and those kinds of things. And I'm going to take it one step further based on a presentation that I heard a couple of weeks ago in Germany at the International Cartographic Conference. What kind of technology will it take to handle centimeter resolution data for the entire world, which we're likely to have at some point in time. So, and people at Microsoft are going to rapidly help us get there.
So to resonate with what Lee said, this is also what David, you were alluding to. This is the incentive. So why we work together as a community? Because these are the kind of problems that drive you every day for solutions and for innovation, scientific research, pushing towards more depth. And I think if without this absolute intellectual benefits, it's very hard to define superficial partnerships.
So my last thoughts would be sort of don't wait for the end to grow and engage your user community. Do it right from the beginning, or do it from right now. Sort of do it all the time. Maybe that even extends to OGC. Use OGC as a catalyzer. One of the advantages with our quasi-AHIS project is that they ended up doing a lot of work that they wouldn't have otherwise done had we not engaged with them. And so think of CyberGIS as a catalyzer for the community to sort of get the ideas out there. And it's not only the people who funded on the project, but it's anybody who's at all interested in it.
Okay. I guess my final sort of partner-related comment would be what this group can do to help partners, which I just want to sort of build upon what Serge was talking about earlier. I think this idea of people within the CyberGIS project, you know, their effort to take computer science parallelization techniques and apply them to spatial problems and develop nuggets of knowledge and code about how to solve fundamental spatial problems in a highly paralleled environment, and providing code samples to do that in a way that people could reuse to develop other methods that they want to plug into the gateway. You know, this was an issue that came up, an idea that came up last year. One of the NCSA presenters, you know, said, don't go parallelize everything you've ever done. You know, you guys need to figure out what the little pieces are that everybody else needs. And I think that piece of the project is very fundamental to where we need to go to help grow this idea and grow this concept within the other partners.
Well, any last comment?
Yeah, I can give one last comment. Okay, so whenever we train our salesmen to go and deal with our customers and partners, we make sure that they are not selling a product, but we make sure that they are selling a stack of products, which means they figure out what is the best way to sell multiple products. So if you blend these products together, you get a bigger value. So we say, okay, you have the SQL Server spatial databases if you're working from the data side. You have the SQL Spatial Library if you're coming from programming side. We have the Bing Maps, geospatial services, geocoding, routing, or whatever if you want to go from this side. We have our cell phones if you want to track somebody spatio-temporally. But if this is streaming data at real time, we want to sell stream insight and reactive framework to handle real-time data streams. If you want to keep your data in the cloud, go with the Azure Story. So we have a stack of software. We encourage everyone to take this stack of software, blend it together, and come up with a way that we have never thought of it before. If you want to get an example, ask Cyrus, or ask Cyrus students, how they could take all this Stream Insight, Azure, SQL Spatial, this and that, then they blend it in a way, come up with something useful that we have never thought of. That would be an interesting way of doing partnership. And we're looking to hear about this more in the future. Yeah, you've done it once. And if you're here tomorrow, I can show you maybe 2, 3, 4 videos. It depends how much time we are going to have tomorrow to show you some case studies we have done. Some students from the UW, some students from USC who managed to take these products and then they do interesting stuff.
Sorry,
Hopefully we can show
are you
some
telling
of
us
them
you're
tomorrow.
standing in for Dan again tomorrow? Is that- So,
I should be coming with Dan, but I'm going to stay far away
Okay.
from him.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we should be coming together tomorrow, yeah.
Okay, so, but you'll be here in the case that he doesn't. Right, so-
I'll be.
Cyrus, did you want to comment?
I guess you can.
So what,
He does not remember what his students done a long time ago.
so one last thought. The slide, I'm enamored with the slide that Luke, I mentioned this before, that Luke and Benoit, so the integration stack, because you mentioned stack. It's an integration stack, really, is what it is, and it parallels Xiaowen's component architecture published in the Annals of the AAG in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. Does it, Luke? From the bottom to the top? It's, or maybe Benoit, maybe you know that it's 4 levels, so Xiaowen's diagram, it's in the proposal. From bottom to top is data analysis, then data management on top, then GUI, user interface, and then collaborative analysis. And every one of those levels in the stack is a candidate for integration in some way. And so for those of you who are interested in one of those levels, because maybe not everybody is interested in all 4 levels, that would be a very difficult challenge to do. The entire project's interested in all of those levels, but that I'm suggesting might be a topic for conversation, that you could plug in at any one of those levels, because the integration strategies, that slide, and maybe we'll have to see that slide again, just to refresh everybody, because it's emblazoned here, is that I've been trying to push that same kind of idea, so it's interesting that independently you did that, and it looks really wonderful for a way forward in terms of plugging community in, looking at all of the protocols that might, a protocol that might exist at each of those levels in terms of integration, and that would be a way to plug in from a broader community rather than just saying you have to go this way with it. Because there are 4 major parts of technology in the software stack that are there. Okay, so next panel, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next panel is the workforce education development